polling. I will share screen. There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for leveraging technology tools to facilitate dynamic online discussions and student engagement. You get a 2-for-1 today because along with me, I'm Brent Scholar, is Brendan Lake, one of our super instructional designers over there at ASU Online.
Yep, thank you for the promotion. Yep.
Absolutely. And just, so everyone knows, Brendan and I actually did most of this presentation once before. So that's why we're getting a little bit of theory ahead of time before jumping right into the tools. So it's not that we were overzealous. We decided we're going to use what we already know. Really quickly. So one thing to think about is, why you're here today. And it's really, if you've ever had a discussion board that went nowhere, right? I know I have. In this session, we're going to talk about some ways we can use different tech tools to, stimulate more student engagement with that, and then maybe provide some overall strategies and thinking about what type of tech you should be using depending on what your situation is. Really quick, like I said, I'm Brent Scholar. I'm a lecturer here with FLIS. I focus on organizational leadership. I am starting to think I'm a technology implementer because I like to do new things. If you need to get in touch with me, if you have any questions down the line, you can reach me at bscholar@asu.edu. And Brendan?
Hello, my name is Brendan Lake. I have a doctorate in music and a master's in education technology. I am an instructional designer with ASU Online. I support about 10 different programs, including interdisciplinary studies and organizational leadership within CISA. And I'm also an instructor at the School of Music as well.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with a quick Zoom poll. Ooh, hold on. That was Zoom playing, polling, let's see. All right, here we go, launching poll. How do you feel about using tech tools in your courses? Lynn and Jeff, can you see those?
No, I don't see it.
I can't either.
Okay. So the poll is, are you very nervous, 50-50, confident, or very confident? So really quick, we'll just do a...
Now I can see it, yeah.
Now you can see it.
Yeah.
Now, am I supposed to hit the Zoom poll? Am I supposed to do something to see it?
No.
Maybe we're seeing the results. We're not seeing the actual poll.
Right, you're seeing, yeah, you were seeing,
okay.
The results popped up. I don't know why it didn't. All right, so polls aren't working that great, so we have some tech to do.
Here it is.
Now popped up.
Yeah, it's up now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm checking very nervous, and I'm checking very nervous because what you just did is a perfect object lesson that happens to me all the time. The only thing redeeming about it has happened somebody knows something about it. So
all right, and then
my internet connection is unstable right now, so maybe it was my fault after all.
No, I couldn't see it either.
No,
So.
it was a tech thing. I think Nick did it and it worked through. I have one vote for 50-50, and then I'm just going to end the poll because we're good.
Yeah, I'm very nervous. Oh, wait a minute.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
It's all good. I think what's important really to talk about here is tech is going to happen, right? We're even if we weren't going through what we're going through now in the world, tech is going to happen. You acknowledge it and you move on, right? You make the most of it and you move on. So I think that's the important lesson here to think about. But thank you for sharing that you are very nervous, because it can be nerve-wracking because you don't know what's going to happen. So doing dry runs and stuff is good, and we thought we kind of did that because we did this on Monday and Nick's been doing it all week. But anyway, I'm going to pass the ball over to Brendan to talk about what a typical discussion might look like.
Sure. And to start our presentation, when we did this a while back, I wanted to kind of frame why the opportunities that we have with different technology tools. And I wanted to kind of drop you into a discussion board where there's a very common scenario. I think one of the default common questions that instructors ask in a discussion is, what surprised you about the reading? And part of the purpose of that is to check that students read and then give them opportunities to interact. And so in a perfect world, students would engage and you'd have this beautiful community of back and forth, and that almost never happens. And so I'll give you an example of student one saying, something that surprised me about this article was the idea that, continue, and maybe they didn't read the whole article. Maybe they just, jumped to page 10, found something that maybe they could write, just as a message to the instructor. And then student two doesn't read the other 23 students. They just read this one particular thing, said, great point, there's a lot of agreement. We had a policy about this at my last workplace. And then of course, student one doesn't check back in to read this. It's kind of a dead end. There's no back and forth. And so I think one of the biggest problems that we've identified, at least in my work as an instructional designer, is that a lot of discussions, they're not really discussions. They're really just assignments to the instructor disguised as student interactions. And to really get a back and forth, you need to be very intentional about what you're doing. You to really scaffold the interactions that you want. And so, really think about, since I've given similar talks and presentations in the past, I always emphasize two things. One, to think about the interaction, the purpose in the interaction you're doing. Do you want to do academic debate? Do you want to do peer review? Do you want to do metacognition, build community? Think about the purpose. What value can learners bring to each other rather than just interacting? And the second thing I often talk about is, what is community in an online space? And community isn't necessarily being in the same place and sharing interactions. Community is built on the value that learners bring to each other. And some of the tools that we're going to introduce really, one, it's a more authentic engagement with the reading. It encourages back and forth, and it really emphasizes the values that learners bring to each other, rather than just communicating what students think the instructor wants to see disguised as student interactions.
Absolutely. And, there's lots of different tools out there. Of course, we're all using Zoom, Skype. Simulations is another way you can engage students, and we can talk a little bit more about that at the end if you'd like. And then in lots of other different ways. We're going to focus on 3 during our conversation here, which will be Perusal, Yellow Dig, and Slack. Before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about how this is why do we want to engage with our students, right? This is really our new social norm, right? Today, not even when we've given this in the past. Now really social community platforms are the way that we're all communicating, and really can give that sense that education really needs to really change, right? And engage our students more and provide these types of tools in order to do this. There's an increased knowledge retention, right, through this back and forth. We have Bonwell and Eisen discussed how when students talk about what they are learning, they remember it more, right? One way it's the old adage of, if once you learn it, what do you do to really solidify it? You teach it, right? But just talking about it more. It's just another way to involve our students in their own learning. Anyone who learns differently, right, whether it's audio, visual, kinesthetic, right, we can provide those opportunities for students in order to respond and learn in their modality. In our online learning environment, there's more audio in that visual learning, while the kinesthetic, is lessened. But if you have them maybe demonstrate something, that can bring in the kinesthetic on a video or maybe even just an audio. Having students engage with each other more provides this extra learning method and may increase overall learning as well. It's a flipped course, right? This is a term you might have heard before. It's students are taking advantage of their online learning as traditional courses accessing online platforms, and then focusing on how students will interact and can produce more of their learning. Allowing them to interact online with the material creates comments such as, yes, I admit I learned more, right? I also enjoyed the opportunity to connect with other students and learn together the material. I greatly appreciated the opportunity to think critically about the book's content. These are things that are happening so that students are actually learning more. Then there's actual opportunities for feedback and guidance. With online learning, instructors are improving at 77% say that they're thinking more critically about engaging students. Okay, that's what we are thinking of us, the instructors. And 73% are better at using multimedia, and 70% are better at using LMS. I have to say that probably that number might have actually dropped a little bit with our current situation, because we have so many people that are coming onto our system that haven't been teaching online, but they're probably still about the average now. And then just thinking about it, 33% of faculty are using digital courseware. That was a survey done by Pearson Education. What students want, right? This is really what we have to also think about. What do our students want from their education? And as they are becoming the generations of people that were born with the computer or their phone in their hands almost, right, instead of the silver spoon, they don't have an issue with technology. What our challenge might be is we have a broader range of people that are our students. We don't just have a traditional, or what was the traditional 18 to 22-year-old as our student anymore. We have all generations in the classroom, and we have to remember that and think, how are we going to do things differently there? So what it can do, though, is provide early alerts for academic trouble, right? This is what students want. They want to know if they're in trouble with something. They want their ebooks or textbooks so they can take them with them wherever they go. They want the games, they want the simulations. They're used to growing up with the video games, and they really do react with the simulations and such. At LIS, we actually use many of them in our OGL curriculum, and we're actually going to be introducing another one into a capstone, we're calling it, for our interdisciplinary studies who are required to do internships right now because they can't go off and do their internships. So we have a simulation for them to go through, as well as learning other things. They want the learning management systems. They want to capture lectures, just like we're doing by this recording, you know, and they want online communication tools and collaborations as well. So let's jump into a tool that I've been using for a couple of years now. It's called Perusal. And it's really, the students will purchase the textbook, depending on how you set it up. It will be either through Perusal, or the bookstore can supply codes to all of the students using what's called the Integrated Access Program. This is just for us here at ASU that we have set up, and I highly recommend using the Integrated Access if you have students purchasing simulations or textbooks or any of that thing of that nature, because what happens is the bookstore will obtain the codes. They will send them out to all of your students, your learners in your class, and then their ASU accounts just get charged. That way you don't have to worry about, does someone have the money to purchase it right now? Are they going to purchase it? So it is a really great way to make sure that all your students get what they need in their materials at the beginning of class. The one trick right now is some people are using it and some people aren't. So just be aware and send out really good directions, and hopefully our students will read it. But you know, we have to, what Perusal does then is has students read the textbook. And over the years, I've had many students say, wow, this is the first textbook I've ever read. And then what they do is they annotate the textbook by making their own comments, by asking questions, and then their peers get to see their comments as well. And they actually do, because they get notifications of these, talk back and forth. I have seen engagement go way up in terms of students talking back and forth with each other using this product. Excuse me. So, you know, this very much differs from the typical discussion where it's what I call it the drive-by. The student comes in, they post their original, they go in and they do their 3 posts or 2 posts to their peers, and then they're done in one day. Can it happen here in Perusal? Yes, it does. But it is much, for some reason, students are more apt to come back into this, or at least talk to their peers at least once. So there's a little more engagement there. There's an algorithm behind all of this that actually will grade the assignment for you, so that you can focus on reaching out to students that maybe need extra support and such. So that's a great thing to do, as well as you can spend some time responding to students, which they also like to see our involvement. Here, you know, the good thoughts about all this: it brings everyone together to answer questions and to interact. It was impressive. These are, by the way, student comments. I found it to be more resourceful, an effective tool to actually get me to read the textbook. So I think it's really important that students are liking it, and that's good. Now, let's not say that it's, you know, it's all beautiful, because it is not for everyone, right? Some students don't like reading online, so they want a textbook. They want the actual physical book in their hand, and they don't like this because then they feel like they're doing double work, because first they'll go read the textbook, they'll take their notes, and then they'll come back online and do the annotation. What I've said when that has come up, and usually it doesn't come up until after the fact, is say, you know, I wish you would have said something to me. Perhaps we could have come up with an alternative assignment for that person, right? I mean, we can have these assignments, but if it's not going to help somebody really learn, what's the point? So I've been thinking of ways to do that, and that would be a chapter summary instead of doing the annotation, just to support, you know, that student, you know, where it's necessary. It's not my favorite. However, I liked it better than the discussion boards. So they don't like it, but they like it better than the discussion boards at least. And I think that's important for us to note as well. You know, what's coming up next? Like I said, I'm always looking for ways to improve how to do this. I've added guided questions to it, where sometimes they are mandatory for students to answer, and sometimes they aren't. I use it as a tool to let students know, hey, this is an important concept for you to know, so that they understand, hey, this is something I need to apply in our work, right? Because sometimes that traditional discussion question is setting the student up with some knowledge, right, to do the larger assignment. So that's kind of lost a little bit here, but the way that I've created that atmosphere again is saying, hey, this might be important for your upcoming paper, or ask them a question about a topic. Usually then it's not mandatory. In order to hit some objectives, since I took away discussion questions, traditional ones, I did make some in class mandatory. And I star them, and I tell them which ones they are, and I put a hashtag in order to be able to find them easily. Unfortunately, the computer doesn't know if they've done them or not, so it is a slight manual process to check it, but it doesn't take very long to check who's done it and who hasn't. The only other negative then is the fact that you have to take points away from students if they don't do it. But I make that very clear, you know, that they're not earning the points because they haven't taken that leap. Canvas and perusal, you know, the good and again, the not so good there. These are things that we learned. You can integrate it into Canvas. It is not necessary to do so, but you can, which can make things easier. The grades will then automatically transfer if you set it up to do so. There's ways to set it up to have the grades transferred to Canvas automatically, or you don't have to. And like I mentioned earlier, you can use the integrated access. Okay, here's the not so good. If you like to use the Canvas late policy settings, if a student posts something after the fact, after the due date in Canvas, and you're having the grades transfer over automatically, all of the grades will then be triggered to transfer over and will show up late because the late policy is set automatically. It is actually the one reason why I do not have my grades transfer over, and I have a system that I can go over with anybody if they'd like to know about how I get those grades transferred in without triggering the late policy. Students do not read the different way in order to get their code. So this is dealing with the integrated access. Because they've done it in the past, oh, I know what I need to do. They try to order the book through perusal. They can't because it's blocked. Then they go and they order the book, and now they have 2 codes instead of 1. Luckily, I will say Christopher Hanks, big call out to him. He is awesome when it comes to fixing these for our students. And then the students don't get the code because there's actually a glitch between Canvas and forwarding with their email. They have to be all aligned in some way. I don't quite understand it, but tech support can definitely help. I'm going to pass this over now to Brendan again to talk about Yellow Dig.
Hello, everyone. Perusal is one of my favorite tools that we have at ASU Online. I think it's very effective. And the more we've used it, we've actually just seen better and better uses and reviews from students. We currently use it in our masterclass for teaching online for instructors beginning to teach online. We made it a completely optional assignment. And we usually typically have about 100 instructors per course, and we made it optional. I was expecting maybe 10 or 20% to use it. We ended up seeing engagement about 50 to 60%. Now, this isn't a true, one-to-one ratio with students. Like, obviously, professors are slightly different from students. But yeah, it definitely validates how valuable that tool is, even when there's no requirement to use it. I think it's a wonderful tool. My other favorite tool that I often almost always recommend in a course, I think there's a really great use case in almost any course for this tool, is YellowDig. And YellowDig is a discussion platform with the social media look and feel that can serve either as a supplement or a replacement for LMS discussions. And I've written here the features: student participation tracking with a points leaderboard, auto-grade student activity. You can use likes, loves, and hashtags. So it's a little bit more interactive. It's not just a post and reply system. And I'll get to this in a little bit, but YellowDig can actually track not just posts and replies. It can actually track the value. Again, I mentioned this earlier about the value that learners bring to each other through likes and loves. Also, if you ask a good question or you have a great resource that everyone wants to talk about, that's considered more valuable than something that no one wants to talk about or that no one particularly clicks on or likes. So it actually tracks more of that value that learners bring to each other, which is fabulous. And with an LTI link, no separate accounts or passwords are required, so students actually interact directly in their Canvas site. They'll just click on the menu link. They don't need anything. It'll just take them right into their class board, and they can start interacting with peers. And you want to go to the next slide? Here is the YellowDig interface. You can see it is very kind of social media-esque. I think they're updating this for summer to have it even a little bit more streamlined, because there still is a lot of information and buttons on here. But here's the basic layout. So you have the YellowDig feed, which is where looks like this student Kenna posted an article. You can see individuals that posted below. You can see the love it, like it. If an instructor doesn't think that's relevant, then they can actually click, so it kind of removes the credit. Students see their dashboard over there on the right side, where you see 41 points. You as the instructor can set, students need to earn 50 points or 100 points or 200 points in YellowDig. And you as the instructor can set one, post of at least 50 words is, worth X amount of points. If someone likes your post, you get a point. If someone replies to your comment or your question, they'll get 5 points. And so it's a very gamified system. You can see a dashboard with, the most interactive students. So they kind of see it as more of a game interaction. And then I'm trying to think. So I typically, just to kind of talk about some of the high level items, I'll go to you want to go to the next slide, Brent?
Sure.
Use YellowDig. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about when to use YellowDig. Basically, as a blanket thing, I think YellowDig is wonderful for active learning and taking learning deeper, as Brent kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. I don't recommend it as much for assessments unless it's kind of a necessary thing. And as an instructional designer, I would never recommend it if instructors didn't have time to really review everything. But if you want to do active learning, make learning more durable, and so they remember things longer and not just for that one exam, I think it's fabulous. I think you can increase informal interactions, because I think students, based on the tradition and the history of discussion boards that they've seen in the past, typically it tends to be, post this, not just a, wide open, discuss what you like or bring value to your peers. Instructors often set up a, write this 3-paragraph essay and then, critique that essay is, I think, a very traditional way of handling discussion boards online. And so with YellowDig, you can actually say, you want like, 10 or 20 word interactions, which is typically how students interact. If you think about your online classroom, they're not, writing, this giant monologue. They're saying, oh, well, what do you think about this? Or here are my comments, here was my perspective. What do you think about this? And so I think, yeah, you can really informal interactions, active learning, value that learners bring to each other. I've written here, you can replace Facebook. I don't know how many instructors do use Facebook, but it's an improvement over Facebook because, one, it auto tracks participation. Students don't need to log into Facebook or have a separate password or log into a separate space that the instructor has. You can reward high participation and student engagement. And you can have, if you have a high enrollment course, we do use this in a lot of 100, 200, 300 student courses. And that's how you can manage discussion boards and interactions there without needing instructor intervention of grading, was this valuable or was this not valuable? My favorite use for YellowDig is essentially, you can just take a course that you have and say, ask students to post an article or a thought or a question to peers or something that you're curious about in this, side area of Yellow Dig. And then it's kind of similar to how you do a participation grade in a face-to-face course. Was that somebody who wanted to really engage with their peers, ask questions, take learning deeper rather than just passively consuming the content, passing the exams, getting their grade and moving on. I think it's one of the funnest parts of our online courses that I've seen when it's done well. And again, I'm very high on the tool. Anyone have any questions?
So Brendan, can it be used at all for like in a peer review type of setting, like for like a really brief, quick one?
I think the short answer is it can. I don't know if I would recommend that. One challenge with Yellow Dig that's often, instructors want to replace their entire discussion boards or exactly how they have it. And one drawback is that there's no feedback. You can't really score participants on the quality. So if it's a really great post, you can't give it 10 points. And if it's not, you give it 5 points or something. It's just if it's above 40 words, you get credit for it, which is more of a testament and a catering to those informal interactions. So if you wanted to just have some kind of system where you would have students say, hey, if you want to post, an optional peer review, I think might be actually a really good use. So you would say like, hey, if you want to post your essay for peer review, and then let's say it has to be at least 500 words, you could use Yellow Dig in that way. It'd be an unconventional way, but I think it'd be fine. And then any student who wants to peer review it could write a 50 or 100 word, critique of it. I think that'd be a fine use as long as it's, optional and, low stakes. I think that's great.
Do you know if they've also added in any multimedia? So can students record a comment back and like in Facebook?
Yes, in their upcoming version, yes. In their current version, there's Yellow Dig Classic, which we've had for a while. They're introducing Yellow Dig Engage, which is their 2.0. I think that's coming out in summer, but they've introduced more media recording technology. One thing that we are mindful of is they don't have an auto captioning system. And so if you end up having a DRC student who needs captions, that's going to be difficult as of now. I think they're working on increased functionality where you can add a transcript or captions. But I believe that currently does not exist in their platform.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody else?
Yeah, I do have a kind of a question, if you don't mind. I'm Jeff. I don't know if I come up on your screen or not.
Yes, I see it.
You guys are further ahead than I am, all right? Mm-hmm. I'm still trying to figure out this damn Zoom thing. Yeah, so let me just, and I never have done this from the other side. So part of my issue is I'm assuming that Brent, you are showing the PowerPoint or a PowerPoint, right?
Correct.
And Brendan, you're commenting on the PowerPoint that Brent is showing in another location, right?
And from a previous presentation, yes.
Okay, so what my students will be seeing when I'm using Zoom and talking to them, and I'm showing PowerPoint, is what I'm seeing now with this, the thing from PowerPoint plus whoever's talking and whoever's in that lineup, right? I mean, that's a simple, really dumb question, except I don't know the answer.
I don't think that's a dumb question at all, Jeff. The answer is yes. You will. If you share your screen, right?
Yes.
So if you're sharing your screen. And Jeff, if you want to practice, I'm happy to we can set up something and practice or with you.
I may take you up on it. And in fact, I'm going to check out of this. I appreciate your guys' help, but this is something I will put on the back burner. And after I get Zoom down and Canvas down, since I'm struggling with those, maybe I'll come back and follow up on this. But right now, you're advanced. I'm at an advanced class when I'm in beginners. All right. So thanks very much. I'll just listen a little bit to what they have to say to Slack, so I'll know that, and then I'll check out. All right. But I didn't want to walk out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
One thing I do want to clarify about Yellow Dig is currently that it's available on a license for ASU Online. I think it's now available to everyone at the university, but there's a small fee if you want to use it per seat. Yellow Dig is offering a pilot through the end of summer. So if you have a summer class and you want to try this out, I would highly recommend it. Moving forward, I think we're still pushing for the university to have a university-wide license where it's free for everybody. But just be mindful, as of now, if you want to use this in the fall or spring, there might be like a $2 or $3 per student kind of fee you might expect.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for bringing that up. So the students then pay for that fee?
I believe it's paid for by the department, and there might be a way to get around that, where students would pay. But yeah, so the current system, I believe, is that the departments pay for it.
Yeah, and that's something that Chris Baca and Lori Bello are currently looking into as to whether or not we can renew that license, because we do have instructors already for the last year that have been using YellowDig within CISA. So we are looking into getting that licensed and what that would cost and if that's possible.
Great. Thank you, Nick, for chiming in with that. Hopefully good news. If not, then the students can do how does the pilot work, Brendan?
The pilot works basically, I want to say they will submit a form to CISA. Nick, do you know if you have that form available, or do you know about that form?
I do not, but I can find out for sure.
I'll send that to you if any instructors reach out to you.
Great.
So the instructor would submit a form to their department, and then I believe that department forwards it to UTO, who puts the course in a separate area where you have access to YellowDig. And so that's how it's managed. And so if you reach out to Nick, he'll have information on that.
So Nick, I'm just going to say, can you look into that? Because I'm thinking of one of our assignments for 401 that, or something that I'm trying to do is in that, and we can talk about that offline. So I might want to actually use YellowDig. Are you shocked, Brendan?
No, not at all. It's a great tool. I like it a lot.
I think it might be very useful. So anyway, let's move on. Talk a little bit about Slack. This is a new to me tool, but what is it, right? It really can replace email or that instant messenger, right, for a quick communication wherever we are in our work communications. You can create a workspace for a department, for a faculty, for a college, or even a class. And in my next slide, I'll show you what some of those screens look like. You then can create channels within those workspaces for different types of conversations you want to have there. Students can then add their own channels. So if I have a class workspace, students and working in teams can have their own channel. In fact, for anyone who knows that about the Starbucks students that we have, they actually have a Starbucks only student channel that they communicate with each other. And I think that's really cool. There's no instructors, no administrators on there or anything. It's available for everyone at ASU. And you can also add different types of apps. You can actually add Zoom app to it, where then a click of a button, your students can go directly into Zoom. If you add a Zoom link there, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I haven't even touched on. Since I started using it, let's see, I think it was around March 16th when session B started. So this is what kind of like Slack on either side looks like. I put two different workspaces up. On the left here, we have a CISA workspace. So you can see these are my 4 workspaces that I currently have, and this is the CISA one, and these are the channels that they have set up for that, and they'll just have discussions. It looks just like probably YellowDig or Facebook. There's a Slack support, which is great if you have questions. You can then there's an organization channel, which I think is just all for ASU, and then we can also direct message people. So that's available also. So if you're setting up a Zoom, you might want to have a direct message with somebody so that if there's a technical issue, they can alert you, hey, your poll isn't showing up, for example, right? Or, hey, we can't hear you. That way it's not just blurted out. On the left-hand side, this is an actual class. I had them create one for my class, and they added the students in automatically. Now the students have to be active in it, right? They don't get notification when they're added automatically. But when I have 100 students, boom, they're all in. So I created that workspace, and then I created 4 channels. A what's on your mind channel, that was kind of supposed to be like for them to ask really quick questions about the course. If I have a success tip for them, I might post it there, which are fairly generic. Assignment reminders, hey, don't forget your assignment is due. And then life support. I'm going to come back and talk about life support in a second. But why have these? Why have this? Well, going into Canvas or maybe even the email for them could be a little clunky. And right now, especially with how things are, I decided that, hey, if I can shoot them a thing and their phone will notify them that, hey, they have a Slack notification, and then go, oh, wait, my assignment's due. wait, I have an issue. This came up for me. Let me go communicate with my instructor. Just trying to find another way to do it. I used to use GroupMe. I tried that a couple of times. Didn't seem to catch on. This seems to catch on a little bit more. The one that I added, which I really actually like, is life support. And that was really specifically for right now in our time period. Just a way for us to connect as a little more informally with each other, and then even with me, people to say, hey, I'm having this type of a day, or hey, here's a wellness thing you can do. I've posted a poll. So I used emojis and posted a poll saying, hey, how are you feeling today? And then I also did a poll in order to set up what I call my dessert chats, which I do on Monday evenings with the students so we could pick the right time. And you can use that all with emojis and then just like them and everything like that. So it's not that hard to learn. There are some great tutorials out there for it. So I do recommend it if you want to just connect and communicate with your students just in a different way. And that's what it's really, really about. There are a lot of tools out there, and that can help engage your students, depending if that's what you want. You know, understanding what that particular engagement you want to have is going to be, you know, what may guide you. Doodle is a poll so that you can, you know, get students maybe to sign up for, like, again, the best time to have a meeting. There's Flipgrid. I actually don't know much about that. Socrative is asking questions. Edpuzzle is kind of cool. You can take a video, even one from YouTube, upload it into Edpuzzle, and then you can add questions throughout it. So you can have it more of an interactive piece with the students. So they're not just watching a video and then taking a quiz. You know, they learn something, and then you can solidify that with a question, and it's automatically graded and looked at. I don't think there's an integration with Canvas. Brendan, do you want to talk about any of the other ones?
Sorry, I was actually writing a few emails, so I missed your question.
No, I was just asking, do you want to talk about any of these other technology options that we have? I touched on Doodle, Flipgrid a little bit, Socrative and Edpuzzle.
Sure.
Do you want to talk about ARC or Harmonize or Flipgrid more?
Flipgrid, ARC, and Harmonize. So ARC is a Canvas product that ASU has been considering. I understand it's very expensive, but ARC might be called Studio now, or there might be different functions, but that's very similar to Perusal. I think we originally did this for outside of ASU, so we kind of wanted to mention this. That's Canvas's answer to Perusal for media. And so students could post a video, instructors could post a video, and then students can annotate with all their comments and discuss directly in the media, which is, I think, fantastic, but again, expensive. And I wish it's something we had. Flipgrid is a great, very, very easy to use tool for sharing quick videos like introductions. It does not have an integration with Canvas, but my understanding is it's used even in K-12. I've heard, you know, first grade classrooms using it through this, you know, the pandemic and teaching remotely. And so it's just that really a testament to how easy it is to use. I think it's a great tool if you need short video exchanges that aren't graded. And then Appear In, it now is actually now called Whereby. Recently they changed their name, but that's actually an even easier to use system than Zoom, because there's no plugin or anything like that. You just share one link, and students kind of can come in whenever they have. Like if it was one of my courses, you know, my guitar lake, I would just have a Whereby link, and students could log in whenever. You don't have to set up a schedule any kind of meeting. I know that's, I think for free, you can have that for 4 users. So actually I think it's a great use for groups where, you know, one group member can create one link, share it with their peers, and there's almost no barriers for them to collaborate in that space, and they can share screens and use emojis. And let's see, anything else I should cover on?
No, I mean, Harmonize is something that we're working on in general, though hopefully making better discussions, but we're still learning about that. So.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of an add-on to, it's a tool that adds on to the Canvas platform to kind of give some different options and interfaces for discussions. For instance, I think peer review might be a little bit easier if you just had a different layout for the discussion board, and that's kind of what Harmonize is after. Yeah. So to be determined if that's going to be an option moving forward.
Right, and there are so many more out there. So, you know, do a search, look. There's so many different things that you can use. I just learned a new little quick video thing called Loom yesterday. that you can use that, you know, you can embed it, you know, you do a quick Loom, it does a little bit of editing, you can download it so that you can add, you know, subtitles up in YouTube, you can embed it directly from there if you want. I mean, it's very basic, and they're actually, they're giving educators free pro for life right now. So I got one just because I could, and you know, did a really quick video yesterday just to test it out, and waiting on feedback from that. We did have another vote. I know, so we'll just ask, you know, how are you feeling a little more confident now, Lynn, in everything, based on what you've learned today?
Well, I've learned a lot today. I'm a little bit like Jeff in that I'm trying to get Zoom down because I haven't really used that much as far as running meetings or communicating. Well, I do have conferences with students on Zoom, but I thank you for teaching me about Slack because I've heard of it and I haven't done much investigation. Sorry, I've been trying to keep up with stuff here. But that's really useful. So thank you.
Oh, of course, of course. I mean, remember, these tools aren't necessary, they aren't, you know, replacements for Zoom or anything like that. And again, like I offered the last time, Lynn, if you have questions, you want to see Perusal up and running, that's kind of, I'm a big proponent of Perusal because I really, really like the tool and what it can do, but it can really simplify other parts of your course so you can focus on the interaction with your students in a different way. So, and then Yellow Dig the same, which I will be honest and say it wasn't one of my favorites, but because of a class that I'm thinking of doing and or that I'm creating, I'm really thinking of adding it in as another tech component for students to experience. Whether or not I like it or not doesn't matter. So, so Lynn, do you have any other questions, or are there any other questions, Brendan, that we should be asking, or Nick as well?
I don't have any other questions.
All right. Then we'll just show we did have true references just to give the credit where it should be due, and I'll let Nick turn off the recording. Oh, I can't.